Hey everyone, my name is Saturn, and this is what I made this year. This year I made a lot of video games, from Slotgun, Scoundrel, Gacha Animals, Unnamed Prototypes, Omashu, and Monster Path. I also made a lot of YouTube stuff for the Indie Accord, for collabs with Blackthorn Prod and Lazy T, and for my own channel that this video is on. My focus this year was on learning how to program. I've been programming games since I was 13, but I didn't really formally learn how to program beyond a beginner's level. I can make the computer do what I wanted it to do, but I didn't know how to do it efficiently or intelligently. So this year I focused a lot more on, intermediate programming techniques. Learning how to set things up like data versus code, learning some game dev patterns, especially in Unity, and also consuming a lot of low-level programming content, which, even though I don't program in a low-level language, basically shows me what features of C# I should be avoiding, and honestly it helped a lot. So let's start with the prototypes. I made a digital version of the game Scoundrel, just because I like the game mechanics. And I wanted to see if I could make some sort of card animation manager. I also made 2 games in Godot, which I have never done before. They were both sort of like pass the game challenges where me and one other person would pass the game back and forth every week. And it was a platformer where you're a little guy who works for a wizard, and the wizard pays you in money, but you basically don't have any use for money, so you end up just using the money to create platforms. The main mechanic was gardening, and you take flowers of different colors and plant them and pollinate them, crossbreed them to create the desired result for the wizard. The other game was essentially a Gauntlet clone. The last prototype that I made was called Delveborn, and this one sort of got me in trouble. At this point in the year, I was just about to release Omashu, and I was really feeling like I needed to just release games. I felt like I was spending so long making games that no one ever saw and never released and never made me, any money. So I was working on 2 games, Omashu and Delveborn, and I just felt like I have to release both of these or I'm dumb. Delveborn is like a monster battling game where all of the monsters' moves went into a shared pool and then were randomly selected. And that if your move was selected, you would fight. If their move was selected, they would fight. And no matter what I did for this game, it just never was fun. And beyond that, it was also very confusing to visually tell what was going on. So I kept thinking, maybe if I fix the visual, or maybe if I fix the clarity issues, it will be more fun. And it never really was. And so I spent about a month just trying different features, prototyping them, and then they just wouldn't work. Eventually, I sort of came to the conclusion that there just wasn't enough agency, and the randomness wasn't fun enough to watch on its own. So I either needed to make it more like a card game where you select things, like a Slay the Spire, choose your moves, or Pokemon, choose your moves, or just admit that this was not fun. So I canned that. The other prototypes were really not supposed to be releases, but this one was kind of painful to kill. I thought I was going to release something, and like I said, in my head it was like, I need to release stuff. I need to release multiple things in a quick amount of time to prove that I could do that. The thing that I did release was called Omashu. Omashu is a remake of a game that I made when I was in high school based on Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I think it turned out really good. You're basically a snail and you need to beat these little 5 to 15 second levels as fast as possible. It has online high scores and online ghosts, so you can see other people racing along with you. The focus is on, tight controls, very smooth movement, and doing exactly what the level wants you to do precisely. When you do it right, it feels great. You're going fast. It reminds me of the original 2D Sonics, and I was really proud of it and decided to release it on Steam. So far, it's made less than $100, but it did teach me a lot about the Unity online services, as well as the work required to release something on Steam in the current year. Part of the release required me to make videos, which is something that I also have sort of been getting into this year. I've been making some videos for the Indie Accord YouTube channel, but I've sort of been trying out my own, and so I was really proud of the trailer in the end. I thought it worked out really good. Other YouTube videos I worked on were for a channel called the Valpack, which is a channel basically recording moments from just gaming with the boys. Discord has a new feature where you can clip things, and so basically I'd be clipping things or streaming them, and after, a week or so, I'd put it all into a video, try out different editing things, and just make a silly video for my friends. Beyond that, I also put up 2 videos on this channel, one for Delveborn, just sort of outlining why I thought it wasn't fun, and the other for a game, Gacha-Animals. Gacha-Animals is a collab game with New Year, New Me, where you basically run a figurine shop, a gacha shop that sells animal figurines. This game was fun to work on, and it was cool to collab with new people. So far, it's not been doing good on Steam, and we're going to see how far we could push it at Steam Next Fest next month, and decide on its future then. Speaking of Steam, there's 2 other games that have been on Steam for a while. One is a demo, one is early access. First one is Monster Path, which was in early access for about 2 years. We've been working on it for about 4 years, and I just hit the release button for that last week. I'm proud of all the things I learned in Monster Path, even though the final product is not my dream game. I do think it's really cool. I really like the power-ups and how they all interact, and how there's 100 ways to make 100 different builds. The other game that's a demo on Steam is called Slotgun, and that's the game I'm focusing most of my attention on now alongside Gacha-Animals. That game is based on the multiply and release videos on YouTube that are just kind of satisfying to watch, and it's actually PvP multiplayer online. This game is really fun to work on. It has a lot of sort of like juice and opportunity to learn a lot about UI and player experience and UI experience, balancing, as well as all the intricacies of online play and online games. So yeah, beyond that, in physical media, the only things I really created were drawings with my daughter. She loves to draw these things she calls little guys, which are kind of like Where's Waldo drawings, where there's just a lot going on and the little guys are getting themselves in trouble in different situations, and they're all like kind of themed around something. A lot of the stuff I did this year was either with new collaborators or just solo. Jer, who I normally collab with, was pretty busy this year with life events, which I think is another thing that sort of pushed me to learn a lot more programming, art, editing, and just other skills that I would normally pass off to him. It also gave me a little bit more time to learn those things, because normally I'm kind of stressing to keep up with the output of his output. I still feel the stress of like really wanting to release things, so I'm hoping to push myself and get Slotgun and Gacha-Animals and potentially something else out this year. And I'm also really want to push myself to create something that more people will be able to see and play. Sometimes I release something and it's like 7 people play it, or like 30 people watch it. I don't know, I'm in a weird spot where like I like to make things just for the sake of making them, but then when I put them out somewhere, I would really like it if somebody else saw them. Anyway, that's what I worked on in 2025. I guess see you next year for another list.